One of my favorite guests is Tristan Justice, the Federalist national correspondent, co-author of Fat and Unhappy. Welcome, Tristan. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. So I read your story yesterday in the Federalist, and I thought it was. I think it tells everything people need to know about what Tulsi Gabbard is facing. Can you relay it and your main points here for the audience?
Yeah, of course. So the New York Times came out with a story that Tulsi Gabbard came under scrutiny from the deep state intelligence apparatus for her overseas travels. And that includes intelligence that she apparently met with this leader of Hezbollah. And that's based on two anonymous terrorist sources. And so this is really just kind of the same playbook that the deep state has always used. Whenever there is a disruptor threatening to change the status quo, the deep state can and will make up and do anything it really wants to topple that political opponent. It's the same thing that they do with Donald Trump, and now it's the same thing they're doing to Tulsi Gabbard as she threatens to take over the deep state herself as the director of national intelligence.
I think she has the most dangerous job. I mean, the president, obviously, but when you get into the deep state and intelligence, you've got spooks everywhere. I wouldn't be sleeping well at night, knowing that I was going in to take down black ops, take down things that nobody wants to have the light of day come on, even people in your own party. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I think out of any of Trump's nominees, I think the one who probably has the most trouble sleeping at night is probably Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah,
I can't speak for her, but it's not too hard to imagine considering what she's up against. I mean, she is running as a disruptor of the status quo that's been in Washington for decades at this point. And so you saw how hard the deep state went after Donald Trump for 8 years. You know, it didn't stop once the Russiagate hoax fell apart in 2018 after the Mueller report. And so you saw hoax after hoax after hoax, and it culminating in 91 state and federal charges trying to bankrupt and imprison the deep state's top political opponent. And so I think whenever these cabinet nominees, whenever these politicians raise their head and threaten to disrupt that regime in Washington, the nail that sticks up gets knocked down.
Right.
That's exactly what's happening against the deep state.
I mean, the Church Commission happened in the 70s, and it exposed all kinds of things that America didn't understand. What her job is, as I understand it, the DNI was created after 9/11, so it is responsible for all of the agencies talking to each other. So she has access to all of the agencies, and Trump has said to her, I want you to go in and find all the bodies that have been buried. I want to find out exactly what's going on, what's corrupt, what's not, and we're going to shut it down. This is, if people think, well, what about the CIA? She's going to be the one leading. How many is it? How many agencies are there? Like 118? No, 18. Good, it's not 118. 18 intelligence agencies and bureaus. That's a lot.
Can you imagine that there would be 118 agencies and bureaus?
Yeah, yes.
We just created this massive government in Washington that's just so out of control. And one would think that, Americans might be safer with someone like Tulsi Gabbard taking the role at DNI and making the DNI, the intelligence community, do what it's supposed to do, and that is protect our national security with the highest standards while protecting the civil liberties of Americans. And so, but Tulsi's about to go into this hearing. It's probably going to be a hostile hearing, considering what she's up against. There should be no surprise about the fireworks that I think people are about to see here in a couple of moments. But I would just say this about Tulsi. She should not be going into this hearing guns blazing as the disruptor and reformer that she's campaigned on, because she has to convince senators reluctant to reform that status quo that her top interest in running the nation's intelligence agencies is protecting our national security while safeguarding American civil liberties. If she goes in there guns blazing as the disruptor, she's not going to score points with the very senators she has to convince for their vote, especially with the secret vote like this one.
So, Tristan, tell me about the Republicans that are on this committee. How many of them do you think are interested in reform?
Well, she can't afford to lose a single vote on the committee, or else she won't pass the committee. But it's not unprecedented for a nominee to be voted on with a full Senate vote while not passing the committee. And so one lawmaker that people are watching here is Senator Susan Collins of Maine. She had just voted against Trump's pick for the Department of Defense, Pete Hegseth, last week. And so she's shown she's never been too intimidated to reject nominees from President Trump. But there's also a number of other senators on the committee who are questionable. Senator Todd Young of Indiana, who did not support Trump. People are saying he is another key swing vote. So I think Collins and Young are the two primary senators to watch as this process continues to unfold.
Are we going to find out? Because it's my understanding DNI, the committee vote is always a secret vote. You'll know the number, but you won't know who voted what, which I think is an abomination. Are we going to have that vote out in the open? Do you know?
Well, I would certainly hope it's going to be a public and transparent vote. I think Americans deserve that, especially after an election where President Trump was given such a mandate, right?
Yeah.
I think his nominees should enjoy that same mandate unless something abjectly disqualifying or it should keep them from a cabinet position. Democrats have obviously picked their battles. Some of the other nominees made it through no problem. Sean Duffy at Transportation. Looks like Doug Burgum's going to be confirmed. And some of these other nominees have gone through with very little drama. They've obviously honed in on, unsurprisingly, the two nominees who were former Democrats prior to this last election, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard. So it seems one of their biggest offenses to Democrats has been leading the party in the first place. So it's a little surprised that Democrats would hone in on these two in particular. Right.
So let's talk about the other nominations. How do you think RFK did yesterday?
Well, Robert F. Kennedy, as Big Pharma and Big Food's chief antagonist, is it's no surprise he went into another hostile hearing yesterday.
Oh, my gosh, it was insane. It was insane.
But I do think there was some surprise as to how hostile Democrats were in that hearing yesterday. I mean, it was the hostility was near unanimous among every Democrat on that panel. And I think there was at least some hope from the Trump transition team and the Kennedy's team that they might pull a single Democrat or two. But I think those hopes probably faded right from the get-go when the first thing that Ron Wyden did once they opened up the question period was enter into the congressional record a letter sent from Kennedy's cousin, Caroline Kennedy, the former ambassador to Australia, filled with personal, hysterical attacks that Robert F. Kennedy has predators as pets and he's putting chickens in the blender to feed to the rape. I mean, the fact that the Democrat ranking member on the Senate Finance Committee would enter a letter full of personal attacks from a family member said all you needed to know about how the rest of those 3.5 hours went for Democrats and Kennedy.
Is he going to make it, do you think?
I think Kennedy's up in the air. I think Republicans largely showed that they're not too willing to resist Trump's wish for this pick for Health and Human Services. I think if Republicans are going to reject Trump's pick on any of these nominees, it's probably going to be Tulsi Gabbard after they some of them opposed Pete Hegseth, of course, is Collins, McCalsey, and McConnell. But I'm not sure Kennedy's a sure thing, and I don't think Kennedy's team thinks he's a sure confirmation vote either. So I think a lot hinges on this next hearing here in a couple of moments with the Senate Health Committee.
Tell me about Kash Patel.
Mm-hmm. Well, Kash Patel is running up against the same apparatus as Tulsi Gabbard, of course. He hasn't faced the same level of attacks with anonymous sources coming out and leaking to the New York Times that these terrorists are claiming that he met with these leaders overseas, right? Which is hysterical.
No pictures of him with Hitler yet, so that's good.
But Kash Patel he's been a conservative media personality for the past 4 years. He's blown the whistle on some of the lies in the January 6th committee, claiming that he was formerly the chief of staff of the Department of Defense at the end of Trump's first term, and he blew the whistle on no, Trump did actually demand 10,000 National Guard troops to keep the Capitol. But it was Democrats, both within the Department of Defense and running Washington, D.C., and running the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's staff, that rebuked the president's request at every opportunity they had. And so Kash Patel, Democrats and probably some Republicans would prefer someone more in the mold of Christopher Wray, who's perfectly willing to weaponize the agency to prosecute political dissidents. And I think but Kash Patel also has to do what Tulsi has to do today, and that is convince reluctant senators that his top priority is returning the FBI to its intended purpose, which is to keep Americans safe while protecting civil liberties.
Tristan, thank you. I'm a big fan of your writing, and thank you for being on the program. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. The Federalist national correspondent, Tristan Justice.